My name is Adiz. I am 58 years old. And what I am about to tell you will make you question everything you know about family, loyalty, and the faces we wear for love. 3 weeks ago, my own sister Ngozi and her husband Emeka locked me and my husband Tibena inside our burning house. They stood outside and watched the smoke rise. They believed we were gone. They believed they had won. But God had other plans. Hello, my friends. Welcome to our story. Before we go any further, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Lagos? London? Houston? Toronto? We want to know. Because what I am about to share is not just my story. It is the story of countless families who are silently bleeding from wounds no doctor can see. Wounds made not by strangers, but by the very people who shared a childhood with you. For 32 years, Tibena and I built our life brick by brick, prayer by prayer. We met at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, back when I was studying accounting and he was in civil engineering. He was the kind of man who carried other people's burdens without being asked. The kind who would stay behind after class to help a struggling student understand a difficult concept, even when he himself had exams the next morning. We married in 1993. A simple court wedding followed by a small church blessing. My mother cried the whole day. Not from sadness, but from joy. She always said Tibena was the son she had prayed for but never gave birth to. We moved to Port Harcourt when Tibena got a contract with an oil servicing company. I found work at a small accounting firm. Those early years were not easy. We lived in a one-bedroom flat in Remuela, sharing a generator with 3 other families, budgeting every naira we earned. But we were happy. On Sunday afternoons, we would cook jollof rice together in that tiny kitchen. Tibena chopping tomatoes badly, me pretending it was fine, both of us laughing at nothing in particular. Love does not need luxury to grow. It only needs honesty. By the time we turned 40, we had 3 children, our firstborn Chisholm, then Uche, and our last little Amara. We had moved into a proper house in GRA. Tibena had started his own engineering consultancy, and I had opened a small auditing firm with 2 partners. Life had been generous to us, and we were grateful. My sister Ngozi was 6 years younger than me. We had grown up in Enugu, the daughters of a civil servant father and a seamstress mother. Our childhood was modest but full of warmth. We shared a bedroom until I left for university. I taught her how to plait her own hair. She taught me how to whistle. Small, ordinary gifts that sisters give each other. When Ngozi got married to Emeka Okonkwo 11 years ago, I was the one who helped plan the wedding. I bought her Asoebi fabric from Ariaria Market. I paid for her wedding shoes. I was the first person she called when she discovered she was pregnant with their son, Ikenna. I loved my sister completely, which is why what she did to me will take the rest of my life to understand. The first sign that something had changed came about 5 years ago, though I did not recognize it as a warning then. I was too busy calling it jealousy, then dismissing even that as too harsh a word for my own sister. Tibena's consultancy had grown significantly. We had won a major federal road contract in Anambra State. It was the kind of project that changes a family's trajectory. We moved into a new house in Woji Estate. We bought a second property in Lagos, a flat in Lekki that we kept as an investment. Around that same time, Emeka lost his job. He had been working with a multinational shipping company, but the company downsized and his role was eliminated. He spent 8 months at home, trying to start a logistics business that never found its footing. Ngozi was managing on her teacher's salary alone, and I could see the strain in her face during family visits. Tibena and I gave them money quietly, not as charity, but as family support. We never made it feel like a loan. We never kept count. But somewhere in those difficult years, something shifted inside Ngozi. I began to notice it in the small things first. The way she stopped complimenting my home and started appraising it instead, running her fingers along furniture, asking how much things cost with a flatness in her voice that felt less like admiration and more like calculation. The way she began asking questions about our will, about our properties, about how we managed our finances. Questions she framed as concern but which always left me feeling vaguely unsettled. Once, during a family visit for New Year, she took Tibena aside and I later found out she had asked him directly whether he had considered putting her name on the Lekki property as a co-owner, since, as she put it, "You never know what tomorrow holds." Tibena had gently refused. He told me about it that night. She was smiling when she asked, he said. But her eyes were not smiling. I defended her. I always defended her. She is just worried about their future, I said. Emika's business is struggling. Give her grace. That grace, as I would learn, was the rope she used to bind us. The first sign that something had changed came about 5 years ago, though I did not recognize it as a warning then. I was too busy calling it jealousy, then dismissing even that as too harsh a word for my own sister. Tabena's consultancy had grown significantly. We had won a major federal road contract in an amber state. It was the kind of project that changes a family's trajectory. We moved into a new house in Woji Estate. We bought a second property in Lagos, a flat in Lekki that we kept as an investment. Around that same time, Emeka lost his job. He had been working with a multinational shipping company, but the company downsized and his role was eliminated. He spent 8 months at home, trying to start a logistics business that never found its footing. Ngozi was managing on her teacher's salary alone, and I could see the strain in her face during family visits. Tabena and I gave them money quietly, not as charity, but as family support. We never made it feel like a loan. We never kept count. But somewhere in those difficult years, something shifted inside Ngozi. I began to notice it in the small things first. The way she stopped complimenting my home and started appraising it instead. Running her fingers along furniture, asking how much things cost with a flatness in her voice that felt less like admiration and more like calculation. The way she began asking questions about our will, about our properties, about how we managed our finances. Questions she framed as concern, but which always left me feeling vaguely unsettled. Once, during a family visit for New Year, she took Tabena aside, and I later found out she had asked him directly whether he had considered putting her name on the Lekki property as a co-owner, since, as she put it, you never know what tomorrow holds. Tabena had gently refused. He told me about it that night. She was smiling when she asked, he said. But her eyes were not smiling. I defended her. I always defended her. She is just worried about their future, I said. Emika's business is struggling. Give her grace. That grace, as I would learn, was the rope she used to bind us. Everything that followed traces back to one thing: the land our mother left behind. Mama died in 2019, in the same house in Enugu where we were born. She left no written will, just an understanding, spoken aloud in front of aunties and cousins the week before she passed, that the family land in Udi, about 4 plots inherited from our grandfather, would be shared equally between Ngozi and me. The land was not worth a fortune, not in the way city property is valued. But it sat at the edge of a fast-developing area, and surveyors who had come through told neighbors that it could be worth between 20 and 30 million naira once the new expressway was completed nearby. I had not rushed to formalize anything. Grief slows a person down in ways they do not expect. I was still processing the loss of Mama when COVID came, and then the chaos of 2020, and somehow the land papers sat in a file I kept meaning to return to. Ngozi, it turned out, had not been idle. In early 2022, our cousin Obiagili, a no-nonsense woman who sells provisions in Udi Market, called me on the phone. Ada, she said, did you know Ngozi went to the land registry? My blood went cold. I called Ngozi immediately. She answered calmly. Too calmly, I now understand. I was just making inquiries, she said. I was asking how we processed the shared inheritance. I was going to tell you. I chose to believe her. Again. But that phone call was the beginning of my education into who my sister had quietly become. Looking back now, I can trace the exact moment Ngozi and Emeka began their operation. It was disguised as love, and love is the most disarming disguise there is. In late 2022, Ngozi and Emeka began visiting us much more often. They came on weekends. They brought fresh garden eggs and palm oil from the village. Emeka fixed our faulty gate motor without being asked. Ngozi would sit with me in the kitchen and talk about old times. Stories about Mama, about our father's old radio that played every evening, about the smell of our childhood home. I was moved. I told Tabena one night, I think the difficult years are behind them. Ngozi seems at peace. He looked at me for a long moment. Maybe, he said. But why now? I told him he was overthinking. He said nothing more. But I noticed he started keeping his office documents in a lockbox after that. The visits became more pointed in early 2023. Ngozi started raising the subject of our estate planning. You and Tabena are not getting younger, she said one evening, her voice soft with what sounded like genuine care. Chisholm is almost done with school. Uche is in his final year. You should protect what you have built before anything happens. I told her Tebena and I had made provisions for our children in a simple will prepared by our lawyer, Mr. Eshafu. Just a will, she said, tilting her head slightly. That can be contested. You should put family members you trust as trustees. In case anything happens to both of you at the same time. She suggested herself and Emeka. I told her I would think about it. I did not tell her that I went back to Mr. Eshafu 2 days later and had the will reviewed. He saw nothing alarming in Ngozi's suggestion, technically speaking. Many families did put siblings as secondary trustees. But something in me resisted. I told him to leave the will as it was. A month after that conversation, 2 things happened. First, our bank sent a security alert to both Tebena's email and my phone. A login to our joint savings account from an unrecognized device in Port Harcourt. When we investigated, we found that someone had attempted to view account documents, specifically the statements showing our total balance. The login had failed because of 2-factor authentication, but it had happened. We changed all our passwords and did not speak about it openly. But we knew. Second, Emeka approached Tebena at my nephew's birthday party with a business proposal. He said he had found a logistics company interested in buying into a partnership, and he needed 1 million naira as seed capital. He wanted Tebena to be the silent investor. Tebena said he would think about it. He did not invest. And Emeka's warmth cooled noticeably from that point on. It happened on a Saturday evening in March. Our children were not home. Chisholm was in Abuja at a work conference. Uche and Amara had gone to a friend's wedding in Owerri. Tebena and I were alone in the house for the first time in months, and we had spent the afternoon in the garden doing nothing of particular importance. He was reading, I was shelling egusi, and we were talking about where we might travel for our 30th anniversary the following year. It was the kind of afternoon that feels ordinary until you understand how precious ordinary is. Ngozi had called that morning to say she and Emeka would stop by. I made a pot of oaf akwu and waited. But around 4 o'clock, she called again and said Emeka had a headache, that they were not coming after all. I thought nothing of it. By 7 in the evening, Tebena and I had eaten and were settling in to watch the news when I smelled something strange. Not smoke exactly, something sharper, more chemical. Like the smell of something synthetic catching heat. Do you smell that? I asked Tebena. He was already standing. Yes. Come. What happened next is both very clear in my memory and somehow impossible to hold all at once. The fire started at the back of the house, near the generator house and the storeroom that opened behind the kitchen. It had not started from the generator. We would later learn from the fire service report that it had been deliberately set. Accelerant, investigators identified it as diesel, had been poured along the back fence line and at the wooden door of the storeroom that connected to the house. The flames were already eating the back portion of the house when we discovered them. Tebena grabbed my arm and we ran toward the front. But the front gate, our heavy iron sliding gate, had been locked from outside. The padlock was our own lock, but someone had secured it with a second lock we did not recognize, threading a thick chain through the bars. I heard a sound then that I still hear in my dreams. Voices. Outside our gate. Low and urgent and familiar. I recognized Emeka's voice first. He was saying something I could not fully make out, an instruction of some kind. And then Ngozi's voice higher, tighter, saying, "How long does it take? How long? Ada, listen to me." Tebena's grip on my arm was the firmest it had ever been. The back garden wall. We can climb it. The fire is still on the ground. The wall is still clear. We have to go now. It is remarkable what the body can do when it must. I am a 58-year-old woman who had not climbed anything higher than a step stool in 15 years. That night, I climbed a 7-foot compound wall, dropped to the other side, and ran. Our neighbor, Mr. Daniels, a retired Army colonel who lives 2 houses down, saw us fall over the wall and immediately came out. He called the fire service. He called the police. He held me up while I shook so hard my teeth were knocking against each other. The fire consumed roughly a third of our house before it was extinguished. And Ngozi and Emeka were found sitting in their car, parked at the end of the street, when the police arrived. They were both arrested that night. Emeka broke first. According to the police report, which our lawyer Mr. Eshafu later obtained, he gave a statement within 3 hours of being taken in. He said it was Ngozi's idea. He said he had tried to talk her out of it twice. He said she had told him there was no other way. Ngozi did not speak for nearly 24 hours. When she finally gave her statement, She said something that I have turned over and over in my mind like a stone I keep hoping will reveal a different surface underneath. She said, I was tired of watching everything go to her. My whole life, everything went to a D's. The good grades, the good man, the good house, Mama's love, even Mama's land. I was supposed to get more of it because I was the one who stayed close to Mama. I was the one who bathed her. I was the one who buried her. And still Ada gets half. Still, Ada gets everything. There it was. Not greed, exactly. Not only greed. Something older and darker. A resentment she had been feeding in secret for years, perhaps for decades, that I had never seen because I had never imagined it was possible. Because when you love someone completely, you do not imagine they are keeping score. I had made a grave mistake. I had confused my love for her with the evidence that she loved me equally in return. Tebena wept when I told him what she had said. He is not a man who cries easily, but he wept. Not for himself. For me. She was your sister, he kept saying. She was your sister. I know, I said. I know. In the days after the fire, as we stayed at Mr. Daniel's home while our house was assessed, the police and a private investigator we hired began to piece together what had been happening behind our backs for much longer than one evening. The evidence was thorough and damning. They found, in Ngozi and Emeka's flat in Remuela, a notebook in Emeka's handwriting. It contained timelines, dates, calculations. There were entries going back 14 months. Notes about when our children were typically away. Notes about the position of our security cameras and their blind spots. A rough calculation of what the Udi land and the Lekki flat and our bank savings would amount to, with a note next to the total that said, enough to clear everything and start over. They had been in debt. Serious debt. Emeka had borrowed heavily from a moneylender to fund his failed logistics venture, and the debt had compounded. According to the investigator, they owed close to 8 million naira and had run out of options. They found something else in that notebook that the investigator showed me personally. A single line near the back of the book in Ngozi's handwriting, different from Emeka's deliberate calculations. Her writing was rushed, as if she had written it in a moment of unguarded honesty. It said, if I had been the firstborn, none of this would be necessary. I stared at that line for a long time. She had turned our whole lives, my childhood with her, our mother's love for both of us, 32 years of my marriage, into a grievance about birth order. About something neither of us had any choice in. And from that grievance, she had built a plan to kill us. The investigators also found evidence of the second lock, purchased from a hardware store in Remuela 3 weeks before the fire. Surveillance from the store showed Emeka making the purchase. And phone records showed 19 calls between Ngozi and Emeka on the day of the fire, beginning at 6 in the morning. They had spent the whole day preparing. 2 days after the fire, lying in Mr. Daniel's spare bedroom, Tebena reached across the darkness and took my hand. There is something I need to tell you, he said. I turned to look at him in the dim light. Something in his voice made my chest tighten. Last year, he began slowly, Emeka came to me alone. Not with Ngozi. He called me to meet him at a bar in D-Line and told me that Ngozi had been asking him to help her approach a solicitor about contesting your mother's land, having the whole inheritance reassigned to her alone. My breath stopped. He said he had refused. He said he was telling me as a warning. Tebena paused. I did not tell you because I thought it would damage your relationship with your sister, and because I thought it had ended there. I lay still for a long moment. Why are you telling me now? Because I think Emeka's version is not entirely true, he said quietly. I think he came to tell me partly as a warning, and partly to test how we would respond, to see if we would confront Ngozi and create an opening he could use. And I walked right into it. I understood what he was saying. By keeping quiet, by choosing peace over truth, Tebena had given them the confidence to keep planning. They had read his silence as ignorance. They had taken his grace as weakness. We both kept things from each other, I said finally. We were both trying to protect the peace. He squeezed my hand. The peace was already gone. We just couldn't see it. The case went to court in the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt. The charge against Ngozi and Emeka Okonkwo was conspiracy to commit murder, arson, and attempted deprivation of property through deception. The court was not empty on any of the trial days. News of the case had spread. People talked about it at market stalls and on radio call-in programs. Journalists wrote about it. A woman I had never met sent me a letter saying she was praying for us. Another woman, older, from ABA, sent a short message through my daughter Chisholm that said, Tell your mother she is not alone. This has happened in more families than anyone will admit. That letter stayed with me. On the day I testified, I did not allow myself to cry. Not because I did not feel like crying. The grief was enormous, a living, breathing thing inside my chest. But I chose to let the facts carry the weight. I described everything calmly and clearly. The smell of smoke, the locked gate, the chain we did not own, the voices outside in the dark. And then I looked at Ngozi across the courtroom. She was thinner than I had ever seen her. She looked at me once, then looked away. She did not look at me again for the rest of my testimony. Mrs. Ease, the prosecutor asked, how would you describe your relationship with your sister prior to these events? I took a breath. I would have told you it was the closest relationship in my life, outside of my marriage and my children. I would have told you I trusted her without condition. And now, I thought about the notebook, about the 14 months of planning, about the line she had written in her own handwriting. Now I understand that trust given without discernment is not love. It is risk. The defense tried to present the case as a moment of desperation. Two people drowning in debt who had made one terrible choice in a moment of despair. They asked the court to show mercy. The prosecution laid out the 14 months of planning, the purchased padlock, the phone records, the notebook. The judge deliberated for 4 days. When the verdict came, he found both Ngozi and Emeka Okonkwo guilty on all charges. He sentenced Ngozi to 22 years in a Wari Correctional Facility. Emeka received 18 years. I sat in that courtroom, and I felt nothing for a long moment. Not relief. Not triumph. Not even grief. Just a deep, exhausted stillness, like the quiet after a storm that has taken everything with it. Our house was repaired over the following months. The children came home from their various places, and we stayed together for 3 weeks. All 5 of us in the rebuilt house, relearning how to breathe as a family again. Chisholm was the most affected. She had been close to Ani Ngozi growing up, closer than the younger two. In the weeks after the trial, she went quiet in a way that worried me. She stopped eating properly. I found her once sitting in the garden at 2 in the morning, staring at nothing. We found a counselor. All 5 of us began attending sessions together. Tibena was resistant at first. He was raised in a generation that believes resilience means pushing through. But he went, and I watched something odd in him over those weeks that had been wound too tight for too long. Ikenna, Ngozi's son, my nephew, was 12 years old when his parents were arrested. He had been sent to stay with Emeka's mother in Imo State. I thought about him constantly. After much prayer and conversation with Tibena, I wrote him a letter. I told him that what his parents had done was not his fault, that he was loved, that the door of our home was open to him, that his parents' choices were not his inheritance. He did not respond for almost a year. Then, on a Tuesday evening, Tibena called me from the sitting room. Ada, come. Ikenna was standing at our gate. He was taller than I remembered. He had his mother's eyes, the same eyes I had known since childhood, the same eyes I had looked into across a courtroom and watched turn away from me. I opened the gate and held him for a long time. He cried. I cried. We said nothing that needed words. He visits us now every school holiday. We are rebuilding something, not what was, because that cannot be rebuilt, but something new. Something that understands its own fragility and chooses to exist anyway. People ask me sometimes, what would you have done differently? They mean, could you have seen it coming? Could you have stopped it? Maybe. There were signs, the pointed questions, the account intrusion attempt, the way warmth and calculation wore the same face. But when the person who holds those signs is someone you have loved since before you understood what love meant, you interpret them through the lens of that love. You give them the explanation that allows the relationship to survive. This is not foolishness. It is what love does. But I have learned something from all of this that I carry with me every day. Loyalty is not the same as blindness. You can love someone fiercely and still see them clearly. You can wish the best for someone and still protect yourself from them. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, does not mean returning to a position of vulnerability. Tibena and I have updated our will. We have secured our properties with proper legal documentation. We have a financial advisor who audits our accounts quarterly. Not because we live in fear, but because we live in wisdom now. Wisdom we paid a very high price to acquire. There is something else. Something I think about in the quiet hours, when the house is still and I am alone with my own thoughts. Ngozi grew up in the same house I did. We ate from the same pot. We heard the same stories from the same mother. We had the same starting point. And somewhere in the accumulation of years and choices and small unspoken resentments, she became someone capable of standing outside a burning house and listening for the silence that would tell her we were gone. I do not understand how that happens. I have turned it over and over, and I still do not fully understand. But I know this. The most dangerous separations are not the dramatic ones. They are the quiet ones. The ones that happen one suppressed feeling at a time, one unanswered grievance at a time, one rationalization at a time, until a person is so far from where they started that they no longer recognize the faces of the people they once loved. Check on your people. Not just the surface. Underneath. You have listened to this story. You have traveled with me through the fire and the courtroom and the long road back to something like living. Now I want you to sit with a question. Not a comfortable one. A real one. Is there someone in your life, someone you love, someone you trust, someone whose name you would give to a stranger as proof that you are not alone in this world, who is quietly keeping score, who smiles at your table but measures your portion, who calls it care but means something else underneath? You may not know. That is the honest answer. You may not know until the smoke reaches you. But you can start asking better questions. You can start paying attention to the small things your heart notices and your mind dismisses. You can stop confusing peacekeeping with truth-telling. And you can hold the people you love with open hands, fully present, fully loving, and fully awake. Because surviving is not enough. You have to survive with your eyes open. My husband and I made it out of that fire. We made it through that trial. We are still in our house in Woji Estate, drinking evening tea in the garden, watching our grandchildren play when they visit. Life is quieter now. Some kinds of noise you do not miss. If this story moved you, if it made you hold your loved ones a little closer or look a little harder at the truth beneath the surface, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story. Because every story we tell here is about the same thing. The courage it takes to stay honest in a world that keeps asking us to look away. See you in the next one.